Welcome into Inside Carolina's The Basketball Show. I'm Tommy Ashley. We're always sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Check them out. If you're a member of the Inside Carolina Premium subscription, you get Johnny T-Shirt 10% off. Just get the code from the message boards and go see them online or in person. That's Rob Harrington. That is the legend Justin Jackson. We're going to talk some Carolina ball. Rob, start with you first. We're now officially into the meat of the schedule, which is fitting because it is Thanksgiving weekend or week. Carolina plays St. Bonaventure tomorrow, 6 o'clock on FS1. They play Michigan State on Thanksgiving at 4:30, I believe. Rob, let's get into it. It's time for Carolina to come out of that 5-game homestand and show out here down in Fort Myers, Florida. Overall thoughts on the last week, what you expect to see starting tomorrow, and just general Carolina basketball talk.
Yeah, right off the top, I think this week is about reestablishing what they laid the groundwork for against Kansas in the second half. Doesn't mean that I expect them to win both of these games necessarily, although I do expect them to win tomorrow against St. Bonaventure. That's one they should win. And they certainly should give Michigan State a run for their money. I think to be more granular, I'm looking for them to have better starts. No more first half malaise. This is, of course, not just a little bit of an issue this season. It goes back to last year, especially. So I want to see them come out ready to compete. You're away from the Smith Center for the first time. No cozy confines, no students, no friendly fans. I mean, they'll travel. The fans will travel well, but you're on a new court. And let's see what they can do, not on their home turf. So this is an important week from that point of view. I don't think they have to go 2-0 or it's a crisis if they don't. But certainly they need to win one of the two games, and they need to be competitive on Thursday as well.
Justin, getting away from home, getting away from the Smith Center, how much did you enjoy that in those holiday tournaments like this? And your thoughts on how this Carolina team might need to get away from the Smith Center?
Well, I mean, and we'll talk about, the differences between the tournaments and things like that. But this time, I mean, as a fan, for one, it's the best time of the year, right? I mean, if you're a football fan, you've got games on Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Saturday. You've got basketball starting basically yesterday all the way through the week. For a player, it's experiences that you'll never forget, right? I think back to all of these type of tournaments that I played in, especially the Maui, not just because we won, but because of all the memories that you have, whether it's going and visiting certain places, in Hawaii, or just the time that you spend with your teammates off the court. Those are memories you'll always remember, right? So then you go onto the court, and it's teams that you probably wouldn't play throughout the year, even really in non-conference play outside of these tournaments. You're going, you've got, against Michigan State, they're going against one of the best coaches to coach in Izzo, right? It's totally different look that you'll see on the floor. And so, I mean, to Rob's point, I don't, because of the way that the whole college basketball landscape is now, I'm not sitting here saying that they need to win both games, but I'm also more on the side of, I think North Carolina can beat Michigan State. I mean, I know Michigan State, and I don't want to jump ahead because Bonaventure has some good players and they've won some games as well. But Michigan State has beat some good teams, but when you look at kind of the way that these teams match up, I think it's an interesting matchup that could cause for a really competitive game that North Carolina could pull out. But to your question, I think it's a great time of year to be able to get away from, you've been practicing for the whole last week, get away from home a little bit, and kind of see some new stuff.
Stay here, Justin, on that thing. What happens when you have a week like this in practice? I can't be honest, I can't remember if y'all did. I'm sure you probably had at least a week off during the season when you were there. Can you change a lot once you're into the season in that week, or what are you trying to do there? Just hone what you already know, or What's the thought process there? Obviously, Roy Williams is a little different from Hubert Davis, but still Carolina basketball, still college basketball, still a lot to learn and to go over in those weeks, that week of practice. So what are you doing that week besides driving each other crazy?
It was more, and I don't want to speak for the rest of my teammates, but it was more for individual players to get into a rhythm, be able to get into the gym a little bit more, be able to get more shots up, more reps, build that confidence in your own time. Obviously, yeah, we had plenty of stretches where it was just practices, and trust me, those were never fun as a player. Like you were just like, when are the games going to come? Like you're having, I mean, full on 2-hour practices because there's no games, right? Um, so I think it's also refreshing coming out of this time because now you have something to truly look forward to when it comes to, okay, now we get to beat up on somebody else instead of ourselves. I always looked at those breaks though as just an individual. Okay, I can get in the gym. I have more time to be able to get more reps, more shots, maybe get some more treatment, get my body feeling really well. To go into this stretch. But then at the same time, you can always work on execution. You can always tighten things up. Coaches can always, whether it's a certain play or whether it's putting in new plays. That's another thing too. You might not put in 5 new plays, but they might put in a new under out of bounds play, right? That the teams that you're playing against haven't seen yet, or try to get, for instance, with this team, they might put in a new play to try to get Luca more free off of some sort of action that they haven't ran all year. So I think those little areas you can tweak, but as far as the team itself, you're basically who you are, from this point on, other than kind of, tightening up a few things.
If folks are in the chat, yes, State lost to Seton Hall today out in Maui. Seton Hall looked pretty good, especially in the second half. State did not look great. I think they were led by a former Carolina guy, so we'll see what that press conference was like. I haven't watched it yet. But, Rob, to build off Justin's point there, the week off or the week away from games, what are you wanting to see from Carolina that maybe we didn't see in the first 5 or the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the season? We saw a lot in the second half against Kansas, but overall, what did you see? What do you think they need to get better at? I do like the point about getting Luka more involved, maybe with some set plays, since he's going to play a huge role. But run with it.
I think that continuing to refine the roles, which they would have to do anyway, and especially now with Seth Trimble out, as important as he was, gave them a little bit more time to do that. I still think the dynamic between the two guards, who current starting guards, Bogovats and Evans, it's like they haven't been able to get them to both have good games at the same time. They both had good moments for stretches, but getting them to be comfortable together and cohesive. Against Michigan State, they're going to get challenged in a couple of different ways, but they're going to need those guys to be harmonized so that not everything is on the front court, because the front court's going to have their hands full just trying to rebound with Michigan State. And so asking them to do that, to do the job physically and carry the load offensively, that's what I'm looking for, is for the guards to have a step-up week.
Justin, your thoughts? What needs to get better for this team?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious is hopefully guys get into a rhythm from the outside. Shooting, where they shooting 33% right now from 3. It's not necessarily sustainable as far as winning games and big-time games, in my opinion. But at the same time, the amount of threes, I think Rob had mentioned it off the podcast, but the amount of threes that they're shooting and the guys that they have shooting, I think are, for me, I'm hopeful that they're able to kind of find a rhythm. I think probably the biggest X factor, if you want to call it an X factor, but in these 2 games is going to be the guard play, right? We know, obviously against Michigan State, it's going to be a big physical inside game as well. But you've got against St. Bonnie, I mean, their guards are what make them go, right? And then you're going against, I don't know if he's necessarily the leader, but he's averaging almost 11 assists a game and Fears against Michigan State. And so how do the guards respond in those kind of matchups? Obviously, they've shown against a team like Kansas, against one of the better players in all of college basketball, and Peterson, making it tough on him, albeit with Seth out there. You had guys like Kyan Evans make big plays. Obviously, now with Luka kind of stepping in there and being a bigger aspect of it. But that's what I'm interested to see. How do the guards step up in these games and these matchups to kind of help, that back line as well?
Rob, we mentioned it, and like Justin said off the air, 32.6% from 3-point range. What is ideal, and what is ideal number of shots wise? I mean, I think we talked about it in one of the shows that I felt like Luka was going to go for 30 one day because he's going to shoot enough to get to 30. Whether he shoots 100%, 50%, or even 35%. But what is ideal for you, for this team to balance it out from 3-point range, and then the numbers that need to be taken?
They're right now they're taking a lot of threes, certainly by Carolina standards. I'm okay with that because 3-point shooting has to be an important part of what this team does, because they don't have the creativity off the bounce they've had in years past, and especially when Trimble's out. So they're going to have to be sort of an inside-outside team without a whole lot in between, like you might have seen in the past. And I think it seems like Adrian Atkinson, who's so great on the message board, mentioned that some of what they've done offensively is they've cut out the longer twos they would take, and they've turned those into threes. So it's not like they're necessarily taking a ton more jump shots. They're taking more threes, fewer twos. And I like that for sure. I mean, that's everything you want from an analytics perspective, is you want to turn those twos into threes. That's what it's all about. But in addition to that, sort of to the larger point, I'm not worried about the shooting still. And I know what 5 games says, and the percentage isn't great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. But it's not a crash and burn situation. You have a lot of guys who are in the low 30s. So it's not like they need to improve profoundly. What you're asking is, okay, turn that 32% into a 36%. If everyone can come up 3 to 4 percentage points, that's realistic. That's not asking someone to completely turn it around. In fact, Kyan Evans was well above that until the last game, where he really just couldn't hit anything. And so I think they'll get there. I'm still confident about it, as long as the right guys are taking threes, which so far they have been. Now, they haven't been helped by, and this is going to stop, walk-ons taking threes, some of the deep reserves taking threes. That affects the average too, but those shots are going to go away. And so what you're really left is the core guys, most of whom are in the bottom, the low 30 percentile, the low 30%. And I think if they can all just come up a little bit, the team shooting profile will improve as much as it needs to. And maybe they can even do a little bit better than that. But I think if they get to that 35 to 36% range, we'll be feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, you start sounding like Rick Pitino there, talking about get rid of the twos. It's either 3-pointers or dunks. I remember that was Pitino way back in the 90s. The worst shot is probably some of Justin Jackson's favorite shots, the floaters and all that. He's like, no. If you shoot that, you're coming out. Justin, build off Rob's point there. I mean, how difficult is it for guys to sort of raise that average? Or obviously it takes work and all that, but it doesn't sound like a lot, from 32% to 38%. That doesn't sound like a huge difference, but it actually is in the grand scheme. What do you see as far as Kyan Evans, as far as Luka, even some of these guys? What do they need to do to sort of build on? Because I don't feel like they've taken a bunch of bad shots. It's not like they're shooting low percentages because they're jacking YOLOs. It just looks like they're not going in at the moment.
I was thinking, and this might be totally off when thinking about this, but I think one aspect that isn't thought about when it comes to the new look of the transfer portal, international guys coming over, things like that. There's not that adjustment period to being in the Dean Dome, right? Or even just being within the program and with the team, right? Like I was thinking, like my freshman year, I think I shot like 29 from 3, like 29. It was anywhere from 29 to 31. It wasn't much higher than that. But then by my junior year, I mean, heck, if it wasn't for a 0 for 9 in the championship game, it would have been probably 39. But I think I finished at like 37 or something like that, 38. And so it's like almost that adjustment period that guys were able to get used to shooting in the Dean Dome, shooting, with all of those fans and things like that. It's not there anymore. So now guys who are coming in, heck, I'll give a shout out to a former UNC guy and Cade Tyson, right? Like he came in last year, didn't have a ton of opportunity, but also just couldn't really find a rhythm at all. And now he's at Minnesota and freaking balling, right? So it's like that adjustment period, I think, is something that people don't really think about. You got guys coming in first year, we're asking them, hey, we need you to shoot 38, 39. But also to Rob's point, the right guys are shooting the shots. They're just not going in, right? Like it's not that they're shooting a ton of shots and they're just being forced to shoot because they're just wide open. Like these guys are legitimate knockdown shooters. They just haven't found it yet. But I think another aspect of the offense that makes me totally okay with it is that they're still shooting. They're averaging like 29 free throws a game. So it's not that they're just jacking threes and they're not going in and we're just not getting any offense. Like we're obviously still doing what we're supposed to be doing, getting pressure on the rim, getting guys into the paint, guys being aggressive and getting downhill, and also being able to space the floor and shoot shots. So if they're able to start knocking down, I mean, heck, 33%, I think they're averaging like 9 makes a game. If they're able to start making 11, 12, 13 a game out of that, like the offense looks even better, right, than what they already look with Caleb getting downhill, Henry being able to, do what he does inside. So I'm not worried at all. I think it's just a matter of time for the guys to kind of find the rhythm, continue to get those shots and shoot them confidently. And once they start knocking down, I think the offense looks even better.
Rob, sort of build off that a little bit. I'm using that term a lot today, but I think it's relevant. I mean, somebody in the chat said it's a little bit different shooting at Colorado State versus shooting at Carolina. Everybody knows, well, if I would hope everybody knows the movie Hoosiers. It's 10 foot, the same rim. It is not the same. I've told my Dean Dome story when I was younger. I'm not telling it again because it's embarrassing. That rim looks like it's out in the middle of the ocean when you're in the Smith Center if you've never shot in there. But is that a thing? Is comfort level with your surroundings and with your team worth maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 threes a game for the team?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. I mean, Justin could speak to it certainly better than I could, but you see, for example, a lot of teams over the years have had problems in the Final Four because you're playing basketball in a football stadium. And I went to the 1997 Final Four and saw it firsthand in Indianapolis because behind the rims there was nothing up, so everything was flat. They had actual loose chairs behind the rims, so there was nothing to frame your perspective. And all the teams shot horribly in that Final Four. Good shooting teams, and no one could buy one because it just I guess depth perception was affected very negatively. And maybe just the overall surroundings. And when I've been to other games, like when they played the ACC tournament, I think it was 2001 at the old Georgia Dome, same thing. You have a stadium with 90,000 seats in it. It's not designed for basketball. The court's too small for an arena that size. So I don't even like the Final Four setup for that reason. So it's not surprising that the percentages dip. And people, maybe it's nerves, but I've always thought that yes, having the home advantage is not just having the crowd behind you, but it's shooting on the baskets that does make a difference.
Justin, is that what 0 for 9 was about in 17?
I wish I could blame it on that, but I had a pretty decent shooting game before. So if it was an all bad Final Four, then yeah, I would 100% blame it on the depth perception. But heck, I'll still say it. It was definitely a depth perception.
It was that. Of course, everybody remembers the dunk at the end. Anyway, if you don't say I shot 0 for 9 in the championship game, I don't think anybody remembers that, except maybe your coaches and your diehards. So,
yeah, we'll stick with that.
Let's talk a little bit about. Well, let me do this. Johnny T-shirt. I mentioned them off the rip. Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com, sponsors of Inside Carolina's podcast. Go to InsideCarolina.com, get your premium subscription if you don't already have it. There's a lot of great content there. I'll throw the QR code up if you're watching on the big screen. You get your Inside Carolina subscription for very cheap. It'd be a great Christmas gift, great holiday gift for your favorite Carolina fan to get them back on the Inside Carolina premiums, and you get Johnny T-shirt premium subscription out there. It's just a win-win. You get discount on free swag, not free swag, discounted swag at Johnny T-shirt. Rob, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning. What is a successful week for North Carolina? St. Bonaventure is always a team that I can't believe Carolina hadn't played them since 1968, I think is what I read, and then only once. It just blows my mind. It feels like we've always heard about the Bonnies. But what's a successful week for this team? 2-0? Does it have to be 2-0 to be successful? Or can it be 1-1? It can't be 0-2 without question. But let's talk about that here. Fort Myers tournament, Carolina's success, what's it look like?
For me, it's 2-0. I wouldn't say 1-1 is a crisis, like I said. I don't think it's a tailspin situation if they don't win both of these games. If they lose both, yes. Not expecting that to happen. But they certainly need to win one. And to say that, yes, it was a successful week too. But I'm not really looking at it week to week like that. I'm sort of segmenting different parts of the season. So for me, it's these 4 non-conference games, which I'm now expanding to 5 to include Georgetown, which is playing really well. That's looking like a tough game, even though it's a home game. So I'll say 5. They need to go 3-2 overall. So you get the Kansas game. That's a huge one. 1-0. Need to split these last 4. So however it looks, you've got Georgetown at home. They should be able to win there. At Kentucky, Kentucky hasn't played great, but it's at Rupp. That's tough ask. And then you have the 2 neutral court games against Michigan State and Ohio State. So the opportunities are there. I agree with Justin. I think they actually do kind of match up well with Michigan State. They're going to miss Trimble defensively because Fears is just he has an astronomical assist rate. It's literally over 50%, number 1 in the country. They don't shoot it well, but they rebound, and he maestros everything. So but they're so focused on him. I mean, he has a Kendall Marshall type role for them. So if they can kind of contain Fears, I think they have a great chance of winning that game. This isn't one of those deals where they're going up in class, they have a puncher's chance. I think this is a toe-to-toe situation rather than a puncher's chance, if you follow the analogy. And so for me, 2-0 is where it is.
Justin, are you there? 2-0, or is there success, even if it's not totally 2-0 on the scoreboard?
I think as a team, it's a success even if they don't win it, from the standpoint of you start talking about the quad 1 and things like that. I think Michigan State is going to be one of those games that even if you lose it, it's still considered a good loss per se. But I don't know what it is about, this Michigan State game that has me feeling more positive about it than negative. So I say 2-0 is obviously a very successful 2 games. I think it's going to be interesting because, to your point, Jackson Kohler on the inside, I think it's going to be the first, Kansas, their bigs were solid, right? But they weren't bigger, stronger, more physical. So I think this is going to be the first real test to see Henry on the inside, really manning the inside on his own and also trying to stay out of foul trouble against a physical big like that. But to Rob's point with Fears, if they're able to somehow slow him down, which I think the way that they have been playing defense, switching 1 through 4, sometimes 1 through 5. Like that takes, I think they're averaging as a team. Obviously, he's averaging 10 or 11, but as a team, I think they're averaging like 21 assists a game. When you switch defensively, a lot of times it creates a lot more isolation and you have to go score at the end of shot clocks. So if they're able to play that kind of defense and force this Michigan State to go create something on their own and it's not fears creating it for them, I think that's where I'm really interested to see this game and why I feel like North Carolina can do that and cause trouble for Michigan State, because then they also can't really shoot from the outside. So you're forcing them to do things that they really don't want to do on a consistent basis. So I'll say 2-0. But I'm excited to see this matchup. I think I'm more excited to see this matchup than I am even at Kentucky. Like I think this game against Michigan State is going to be a really good. Okay, we're in a really good place here and can keep getting better. So I'm excited to see that game.
Yeah, it shows you it's a matchup against a traditional Michigan State team, I guess. You got Kohlers is 15-10. Y'all talking about Fear's assist rate. He's got 52 assists on the season. He's only scored 59 points on the season. What's tougher, Justin, guarding somebody that can dish it or guarding somebody that can score it? I mean, it feels like when you guard Fears the way he can pass, you almost have to make sure you've covered everybody else. You've got all the other 4, right, that you better guard. And he's going to be that type guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna always say it's harder to guard somebody that can score it, because it gets to a point with somebody. Heck, I'll go back to Malik Monk. It gets to a point with somebody that they like. It doesn't matter what kind of defense you play against them, and they're still gonna score. With somebody now, obviously, with a big like Kohler playing pick and roll, causing that kind of separation, things like that makes it more difficult. But looking at this team with a team that can't really shoot, you're able to plug the gaps a little bit more, right? So even somebody that likes to get downhill and create for other people, now he doesn't have as much space to do that. So now you're forcing him to look to be aggressive, to score, to kick out to guys who probably don't want to shoot it. Heck, realistically, the way that Michigan State is built a lot like North Carolina, heck, even from last year, just with a big on the inside, right? A point guard that can really pass it, but not a ton of shooting options everywhere else, right? So you force this guy to try to shoot it, to try to score, to try to play against more of a crowd, and then that causes some issues for them. So once again, it's not as easy as it is us talking about it right now. But forcing a guy who just wants to pass to shoot, in my opinion, is probably easier than forcing a guy who wants to shoot and score to not score.
You keep bringing up Malik Monk, man. You brought up your 0-9, and you brought up Malik Monk again. Those are some rough moments and rough memories. I agree, though, like we talked about a couple of shows ago, that his performance when he put up 47 was off the charts. I mean, you got tip hat on that. Rob, I don't want to overlook St. Bonaventure. I mean, they've got guys. They got 3 guys averaging over 14. Simmons averages almost 19. Carolina defensively in these 2 games, I think, let's talk about that a little bit. Your keys defensively for North Carolina. A, staying out of foul trouble in the interior, and then going from there. Your thoughts?
I like the way that they match up with both of these teams because neither of them is a great shooting team. And the way that Hubert plays defense with this more contained philosophy, and especially this season now with Jaron Stevenson having such a good defensive year, especially against Michigan State, I think if they can keep them in front of them, this isn't an Alabama type team that's just going to bomb you out with threes, probably. Knock on wood. So you want to keep them in front of you. If Michigan State or St. Bonaventure, but if Michigan State especially wins the one-on-one matchup and gets into the teeth of Carolina's front court defense, that's when they'll be helping and when these offensive rebounding opportunities will open up. And St. Bonaventure is a good offensive rebounding team as well. So I think it will be really important to not have the big guys have to bail out their teammates who get beaten. So really what I'm looking for is a more conservative game plan where they're not allowing Michigan State to play vertically. Probably they'll give up more open shots on the perimeter that way, but again, that's not what Michigan State wants to do. They start bombing a bunch of threes, that's playing right into Carolina's hands. And because Carolina isn't a team that relies on extending its defense or doing a lot of pressure, situationally they've been going to it. I think defensively it's sort of a natural style matchup for them. They have a harder time against these teams that will do high screen and roll and shoot 25-foot threes like in Alabama that plays that style, because Carolina's defense is more turtled up than that. And they don't necessarily want to go out and take a lot of risk against these types of opponents. I think that actually favors them.
That's a great point. Preston in the chat, Justin said, you just need to wave your ring at me when I'm giving you a hard time. He's absolutely right. The man's got a ring. He's got the jersey right there behind it to back it up. But I'm still going to give him grief. Justin, your thoughts there on the Carolina's defensive side? I have a feeling that in these next two games, we're going to find out a lot about Carolina's depth at the 4 and 5. And I think that might be a good thing to find that out against quality teams. But Carolina's defensive stands here in these next two games. How do they handle it?
I think kind of what Rob is saying. Like, I think, and maybe this is something, to an earlier question, what are some things that you work on kind of in this week off, right? Maybe defensively you work on, now we're filling the gaps, right? And we're making them drive and kick. And if they hit, like Rob is saying, if they hit 13, 15 threes, then you got to sit there and tip your hat and say, okay, you know what? The game plan didn't work. But I think that's one thing that they're going to need to do, especially to keep away from the fouls. If you're able to plug the gaps and not let guys get downhill and to the rim as easily, it will allow Henry to not have to come over and be in those type of situations and things like that. I think somebody said in the chat, who would be the matchup? I'm interested to see who that is against Fears. I think, me personally, I would love to see Stevenson start on him. I would love to see some size, some physicality, some length to kind of disrupt his vision, his ability to get downhill maybe as easily, and to just see how that goes. And then obviously I think it's going to end up being a full team effort, because I mean, Fears, he's a legitimate basketball player, a legitimate point guard. So it's not like one guy will probably slow him down and, make him have an awful game. But I think defensively, if they can do that, keep guys from just getting downhill as easy as possible. Because then that's when you have Henry coming over to block, and then they drop it off and he tries to recover, and hands and all sorts of stuff happens, and fouls usually happen from that. So I think that's big. And on the opposite side, I think it was interesting looking at Michigan State. I think they're only allowing like 8 offensive rebounds a game. And so for North Carolina, obviously that's been their, one of their biggest strengths is, getting more opportunities by hitting the offensive glass. So it's going to be even more key for North Carolina to continue to hit that and to possibly give them more offensive chances, more opportunities to score against, a half-court defense is pretty good.
Rob, does Caleb Wilson continue his role?
Yes. In terms of overall impact, I'm not looking for quite as big a stats, because we talked about this last week too. Some of these uncontested lobs are going to go away. Michigan State's not going to let them dunk all over them probably. But I still expect him to be a very important two-way player. And in spite of it all, I think he's just more athletic than Michigan State's front court overall. I still think he'll be a finisher. I still think he'll get offensive rebounds. And that's going to be really critical, getting some of these extra possessions. So I think as long as Carolina doesn't lose the possessions battle, whether from rebounds or turnovers, they have a really good shot, because I like Carolina's offense, balanced as it is, much better than Michigan State's offense, which to me is clunky, as well as they've played, respect, as well as they played, I still think it's clunkier than Carolina's offense, which has the potential at least to be much more effective 1 through 5. So if they can handle the rebounds and turnovers and they're even there, then I think they have a real nice shot of having better possession by possession effectiveness.
Justin, in keeping with Caleb Wilson, what does he need to do in your mind, and what does he need to improve from what you've seen 5 games in? Clearly the competition's going to go up.
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to say I'm all in. I'm buying every bit of stock on Caleb Wilson. I think it will, albeit he's a way more talented and better overall basketball player. It will be interesting to see the matchup between him and Carr, because although Caleb Wilson is an unbelievable athlete, Carr might be one of the most bouncy, athletic basketball players I've seen in a really long time. So what does that matchup look like, right? He's maybe, he's already had a year in college. He's a little more physically gifted than, at least strength-wise, than Caleb is. So can he continue to be that guy who gets downhill whenever he wants to, right? Some of these lobs and dunks, they're going to start disappearing a little bit as time goes on, just because you're not just going to have a wide open, you're under the basket, drop it off to you dunk. But the one thing that Caleb Wilson has done consistently is get to the rim, draw fouls, get to the free throw line, get other teams in foul trouble. So can he continue to do that? Is going to be the key to me for him. Whether he has 20 and 10 again and, he, is, put in the conversation once again for the number 1 pick next year or whatever, I don't know. But can he consistently do that? And can he consistently, against a matchup where, okay, now you're going against somebody that's the same athleticism as you, now let's really see the talent start to shine through. That's what I'm, interested and excited to see him be able to show.
And Justin's talking about Cohen Carr, 6'6", 230. He can play, and that's going to be an interesting matchup there, Rob, is to sort of, and we're going to make Caleb Wilson's lock screen if we say too much here, but it's going to be interesting to see him go up against like talent and like physical abilities, because he hadn't really done it thus far this year. Obviously Dubansta against BYU, and he certainly fared well in that. But that aspect of this growth process for Caleb Wilson, playing against guys that are at least similar, and not only similar, but older and more seasoned. College basketball is a lot different than it used to be, but he's still going to go up against guys that have a lot more experience here in the next few weeks.
They're going to push him physically harder than he's been pushed so far, which is how Michigan State always tries to play Carolina. Even a couple of years ago in the tournament, they were getting chippy. They were trying to get under their skin. Armando Bacot had a quote after a game. He was like, "Yeah, they tried to punk us. It didn't work, because that ended up being a blowout. That was like a 4-point spread, even though it was a final 32 game between number 1 and number 8. That's how much of a threat people thought Michigan State posed to them, and the Heels ended up winning that one very handily. And so I think that how Michigan State's going to come after them. I think one of the keys for Wilson will be to accept that physical challenge without overcompensating and getting in foul trouble, which of course is a top priority for the Spartans. And then also just sort of staying in his game, don't get caught up in a one-on-one battle. I thought that happened a little bit against Dubansta, granted exhibition, a month ago now. Stay within yourself, keep playing the great way that you are, and don't get out of the competition because this new physicality causes you to push back in a silly way and to get fouls, which is what they're going to try and bait. Because I still think that almost all the time he's going to be the best player on the floor, and even here he has the potential to be the best player on the floor. So first and foremost is you need to be playing, obviously. So that's what I want to see from him. And from a maturity point of view, they're going to try. Draymond Green went there for a reason. it's not surprised that he went to Michigan State, and he's been around a long time, but that kind of stuff is how they are going to come after you. And it seems like they've always tried to do that to the Carolina teams, usually not successfully. But of course they did win last year, and they came out and they got up big in the first half last year, which is why I made that point at the top. The Heels need to prevent that from happening again. And then regarding Wilson, the more he plays, the better. I'm looking for 37 minutes plus from Vesar and Wilson, to the extent that they can do it. I mean, maybe the physicality is too much, but I don't think Hubert's going to play the bench any more than he has to in the front court. Tommy, you already mentioned the backup five. I think that's a question that Hubert would like to defer to some other time, not this game.
Justin, I saw you nodding your head. Let me ask you, what was it like when somebody tried to get under your skin? Carolina football obviously failed the test last weekend or 2 days ago against Duke. But basketball-wise, what was it like going against that guy? Because there's plenty of them out there. I mean, Rob mentioned Draymond. He gets the most noise about it. But just in general, whether it was in college or the pro level, just somebody wanted to pick you.
It's a different conversation because to Rob's point, in my opinion, it's going to be hard to find somebody that every time Caleb Wilson steps on the floor, he's not more talented than. So from his standpoint, you just go out there and do what you do, right? Like for me, it was same thing. I've never really understood, the people that like really feed into it. Now, some people are able to turn that into like real motivation. And heck, it seems like Caleb is one of those people that kind of turns whatever noise it is, whether on the floor or off the court, and turns that into, some real fire. But that's the reality of Caleb and his game is every time he steps on the floor, he's going to be the best player. Like that's at this point, and then we're only 5 games in, but at this point, I am very confident in saying that from here on out, majority of the time, other than a few situations that you could probably argue, he's going to be the best player. So to Rob's point, he's got to stay out of foul trouble. Obviously, Lord willing, stay healthy. And then just play with the same fire each and every game that he goes out there. And so I think that's going to be important. I don't know if Michigan State talks. I don't know necessarily, if Cohen Carr, if he's one of those type of players. But I just know athletically he hasn't played against somebody like him. Now he's way more talented and way more skilled and has way more ability than him. But I'm very, very excited to see him show that even if he has somebody in front of him that can still go up there and jump with him, that he can still do certain things and score on the floor that nobody else can.
So you don't give me any scoop on. You said you weren't a talker, but I know you played against talkers.
No, I don't. I don't know what scoop you're looking for. First of all,
just the dirt, the dish of playing in the league, playing in college. The stuff that us old heads don't get to see.
I'll be honest with you. In the NBA, you've got some guys. You've got some certain situations that like people have vendettas between each other, but there's no random trash talking necessarily within the NBA. In college, it's kind of the same thing. Like you see a bunch of things highlight. You see Klay Thompson and John Morant. Like you see that stuff highlighted, but it's really not happening on a play-by-play basis. So I mean, I don't got much for you, Tommy.
Man, I thought we were gonna get some. I thought we were gonna get some scoop there, Rob.
No, see, you know what that is. That's the old head mentality of like back in the '80s of like guys hated each other and they would clothesline each other and they, like that's the mentality you're having and you're looking for that. That's just not what basketball is anymore.
Well, I mean, that's how I would have to play. I'd have to, Bill Lambier on you. Like you might score 50, but at least you bruised up and bloodied. Rob, before we get out of here, let's talk about these tournaments. I mean, obviously you got Maui, you've got the Battle for Atlantis. You have all these different ones that they've had. Your thoughts on them? The Players Era. I mean, there's a lot going on this time of year. All these holiday feast week and all these Christmas tournaments and all. Your thoughts on them in general?
I like the variety. I like the historical tournaments, different locations, small gems, like we talked about earlier. I like small gem basketball. I spent my entire first career watching AAU and high school games in small gyms for the most part, and I think that intimate feel works for a basketball game. So I like Maui for that reason in part. The Players Era stuff, in Las Vegas, which for people who don't know, this is a relatively new event. It's expanding. It's offering guaranteed payouts to teams. And that event has sort of hoovered a lot of top talent away from Maui and Bahamas and these other events. It's interesting they haven't gotten Carolina or Duke yet, probably because those schools can make so much money without being an event like that. But I have mixed feelings about it because if that event goes to 32 teams and you have a 5-game situation, well, that might be the entire slate of tough non-conference teams you play. And I really like these home and homes. See, the Kansas game was fun, and it wasn't just fun because the Heels played well and had a great second half. The game last year was fun too because you got to see these home courts. Now, I like going to Rupp. Granted, that's a conference challenge, but I like the home and home with Georgetown. They're at Georgetown next year. That'll be fun. Going to Kansas was fun. Bringing those teams in is a good time, and not everything has to be on a neutral court. You have the NCAA tournament for that. So I appreciate a lot of good basketball is happening this week. It's sort of like I like that Carolina's not in that event, but I'm glad that event's happening because there are going to be so many good games. But I don't want to see Maui keep having years like this. I don't think they can survive if they don't get the blue chip teams. Same with the other events. So I have mixed feelings about it. Ultimately, more and more things are getting consolidated. More and more it's getting dominated by payouts. That's hard to be excited about, even if it's the reality. But I will miss, if the old ones go away, I will miss them. I know a lot of us, Justice before your time, the Great Alaska Shootout.
I was thinking the same thing.
That was a precursor to the 1993 national title game because Michigan and Carolina played there first, and Michigan won that one. Those events are fun because they're in weird places where you won't ever see a game otherwise. So I appreciate having all these great teams in Las Vegas, but I'd be okay with going back to a wider sort of satellite system of events and then maintaining some of the home and homes.
Yeah, Jalen Rose with the offensive rebound tip in to beat Carolina in that game ahead of Carolina flipping the script on the Fab Five. Justin, just as a player, as a fan, as a watcher now, your thoughts on all the tournaments, and to Rob's point, just sort of the consolidation into, we're talking old head stuff here again, so bear with me. I mean, all these old tournaments that they used to have that were loaded. Maui used to be loaded, and now Maui is a nice vacation, I guess, if you're a State fan. But you're not going to see much basketball. Just in general, your thoughts on them?
I think this might be the first time that I've really disagreed with Rob. I love the Players Era. Like I freaking love it. Like, I mean, heck, you look at just last year, 6 out of the 8 teams were tournament teams, right? Like 2 of those made it to the Elite 8 in Houston and Bama. Obviously the NIL, as much as we don't want to accept it, that's just what basically runs the entire landscape now. So you add a tournament in there where, for one, you're getting great exposure. 2, you're playing against some of the best teams that will end up going on the resume, whether win or loss. And then 3, you can add to that money pile that you're needing to try to pay for these players. I love it. I mean, yeah, to your point, I do miss, Maui. I look back, there was, 7 of the 8 teams whenever we had won it made it to the tournament. I mean, heck, we played Oregon in the Final Four and they were there. Wisconsin made it to the Elite Eight, right? Like, so I do miss Maui being like one of those main, like, hey, we got to turn the Maui Invitational on type of things. And I'm also interested in how Michigan State and North Carolina got into this Fort Myers tournament. Like, I was looking at the rest of the field and it was, a little less talented than I would have expected this kind of matchup and game to be in. But I mean, I wish it was maybe a little more throughout. Like, we had good matchups through Players Era, Maui, and the Fort Myers tip off. Yeah. But with the way that they're doing the Players Era, and the kind of matchups and the kind of, teams that are in it. I mean, heck, Syracuse, we were just talking about it. Syracuse just took Houston to overtime. And if it wasn't for missing 17 free throws, they probably would have already had a top, whatever Houston is, top 3 win, before they even go into ACC play. So I'm a huge fan of the Players Era. And it's changing up a little bit, the dynamics of all the other tournaments, but I kind of love the aspect of that.
Yeah, speaking of disagreeing with Rob, we got corrected in the chat.
Yeah,
He's
I
right.
got fact checked, and we need to call it out. I was wrong. It was not the Great Alaska Shootout against Michigan. It was the Rainbow Classic in Hawaii. I don't know why. I think
I agree with you. I knew it wasn't Maui.
It wasn't Maui. The court's different. For whatever reason, I just associated that court. But you're totally correct. So thank you to the chat.
Yeah, Sean Crowley, he's a regular. He gets.
I totally take Justin's points on that. I love the collection of teams there. I would really like it if it were 8 teams, maybe 16. When it goes to 32, I'm just worried from the Hubert perspective that he'd say, okay, this is our non-conference event and everything else is going to be like what we saw last week, which is what you don't, that's what I would be worried about is, okay, does that mean you don't do Kansas and Georgetown because now you don't want to overload the schedule like last year. So it's a bunch of mids and lows coming through the Smith Center. And then you have the big Thanksgiving event with the 5 potential, I guess, however they do it, the guaranteed 3 to 5 games, however they're going to set that up. And then that's your non-conference slate. I just don't want to see it that packed. But I mean, it's absolutely true that, Justin's right. That is where the collection of talent is going. And you can't ignore the money aspect. I mean, if going to Las Vegas for that event means you have an extra couple $1 million in your pocket to go and get the next Caleb Wilson, well, then we're all for it, no matter what it does to scheduling and these other tournaments. And that's the bottom line.
I'm looking at this Players Era thing. I'm not quite understanding how they have 18 teams and not 16, unless that's a typo and I can't count. But that's 9 games. That's 18 teams. That's a lot of basketball. But yeah,
I guess my question to y'all is: so what if, like, these now I don't necessarily want to see a 5-game tournament, this early in the season. I don't know if that's necessarily good for the college game as far as health and all sorts of things. But I guess what if, like, this stretch of games that North Carolina just played, right? Like Radford, NC Central, Navy, like, what if somewhere in there it was like you had a Kansas and then you had a Radford and then you had a bigger matchup, right? Like, what if maybe that's where things start to change? Now, I know obviously, you want to bring in some of those teams for their sake, as far as, compensating them, but also to kind of just build resume as far as wins. But maybe that's kind of an answer to it, is like, okay, you've got this tournament, but then so that's not the only place that you can really get big time non-conference. We sprinkle in a Kansas, we sprinkle in a whatever, a UConn or whatever. That way you don't have 4 straight games of, teams that aren't as talented as you, right? Like, maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, they had the preseason NIT. Justin, y'all might have played in it. I can't remember when that really, where you play the first couple rounds of the preseason NIT at home, and then you went and played in Madison Square Garden. I don't know. I just think for me, from a fan perspective and a player perspective, you want to be able to go and play places. I don't know if I'd want to go spend, maybe now I want to go spend time in Las Vegas, but I'd rather go spend time where it's warm and where it's sunny. But you also need these home games. To your point, Justin, you need home games and on campuses, and you need the bye games to support the other programs. So I don't know, but I think, Rob, to your point, it's kind of going more and more towards the money factor and feeding that beast and getting away from the traditional aspects of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe it's just, and I understand that's the way it is, to your point about $2 million will buy you a pretty good basketball player these days, which is insane when you think about it. Rob, but wrap us up here before we get out. Final thoughts. I'll let you both get final thoughts in here before we get out. Carolina Bonaventure tomorrow, 6 o'clock, and then Carolina Michigan State Thanksgiving Day at 4:30. Go ahead, Rob.
Final comment. In 72 hours, between Tuesday and Thursday, am I right about that, or is that 48 hours? It's 48 hours.
That's math.
I'm shook now because I messed up the Great Alaska Shootout comments, and my confidence is shaken. I'm going 0 for 9 at the end of the podcast, just like Dustin did. But over the course of those 3 days, let's say that, I think we're gonna find out a lot more, because Carolina, if they somehow prevail in those two, they're going to be a top 10 team. Like we said, or I said, top 15, top 15, top 15. It's right there. I mean, it happens right now. They're in the top 10. I think if they beat Michigan State as well as they've been playing, crush Kentucky, if they beat that team on a neutral floor, come out of that event 7-0 with Kansas and Michigan State on your belt already, that's a top 10 resume, and it's off to the races. So I think to me, it's more of a forward positive opportunity than fending off something negative, where I felt like the Kansas game had some real downside. This week, I think, is less downside and more upside, because I think there's this golden chance. They don't have to beat Michigan State, but boy, it would be nice if they did. And as we've discussed throughout this program, I think they have a real chance of doing it.
Justin, final thoughts. And Bart Watts in the chat, and I'm not going to forget you, Bart. He says, when do you start prepping for Michigan State? Do you do that after you play Bonaventure? Obviously, different coaching staff. But for y'all, if you had a huge game after a decent game, did you prep any early for it? It's not like college football where you spend 15 minutes every practice getting ready for your rival at the end of the year. But what'd you do there? And then your final thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's literally, people probably took it as, Coach Williams saying that the most important game is the next game. That's how basically every coach views things, as far as, okay, that we play St. Bonnie, right? Like, there's no, unless throughout this week, unless, you sprinkle in some things that isn't necessarily labeled as Michigan State prep, but it's some things that you might see against Michigan State. There's no jumping ahead, right? So all of their prep and walkthroughs and everything, it's for St. Bonaventure. And then after that game, probably the next morning or next afternoon, you've got another practice or walkthrough, and that's whenever you watch film on Michigan State, you walk through what actions they might do, what you might see, matchups, things like that. But from a player's perspective, they've been watching Michigan State, and they'll be watching Michigan State in their first game. But as far as prepping as a team, you don't do it until after St. Bonnie. But I think, to Rob's point, you look at this, you've got kind of, this tough little, I'll say 4-game stretch with St. Bonaventure in there. But then after that, you could rattle off a 10-game win streak, right? Realistically. So if you're able to win Michigan State, right, and beat them, beat a physical, it's probably going to be a hard-fought game. If you're able to win that, and you take that momentum into a game against Kentucky, and you're able to win that one, then heck, this team could go on and they could go top 5 realistically. Just with the amount of games that they have the possibility of winning. But I mean, I still will stand by. Did I say that they were top 10? Did I say they were? Did I say that?
You-
I can't remember if I
You've
did
been
or
on
not.
there. I think you said. Yeah, I
I think
think you were
last
top
week.
10ish.
Like I'll stand by that even if they do lose against Michigan State or they beat Michigan State and lose to Kentucky. Like the way this team is built and kind of watching overall college basketball, even though there's college basketball is, I think it was, who was it, Rick Pitino or somebody that said that college basketball is at a really good and one of the better places that it's been in a while. Like they've got everybody, especially with Seth coming back. They've got all the pieces. They've got everything that you need to be a top 10 team. So, let's enjoy some. What do y'all like? Turkey, ham? What y'all?
Well, I was going to ask favorite Thanksgiving food. I eat it all: turkey, ham, gravy, rice, potatoes, green beans.
Potatoes.
I mean, I'm
If you pronounce
I'm
it
country.
potatoes, you know you're serious. Yeah.
You're a serious Thanksgiving savant.
Leftovers, everything you want to put on there. It doesn't matter. We'll eat all day. I don't do collards.
Okay.
But other than that, anything's fair game.
Okay. Well, yeah.
What about
I say
you
we
now?
just.
What are you cooking?
I'm basic. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm turkey, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, sweet potato. I'm a big dessert guy, so give me an apple pie. My mom makes some chocolate sheet cake. My wife makes all types of sweets. So give me any kind of sweet. So I just say let's just make a big old plate and let's enjoy this game that's about to happen.
Feast week. I guess that's what we're calling it for Carolina. Got St. Bonaventure's Tuesday. Got Michigan State at Kentucky, and then Georgetown. And then they do have Ohio State right before Christmas as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see this team get away from the Smith Center. And how do they play away from the Smith Center? I think that's an aspect of it we haven't really talked about. But I think that'll be something to watch. Down in the big city of Fort Myers. If you're down in Fort Myers watching Carolina basketball, consider yourself lucky. You're down with the Blue Hairs and the rich folk at that part. I know there's some diehard Inside Carolina people down there. So everybody stay safe. Rob Harrington, Justin Jackson, enjoy the holidays. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy Carolina basketball. Rob and I will be back tomorrow evening with a post game for Carolina and St. Bonaventure's, and we'll be back soon. Thanks, boys.